Hello and welcome to Power Skills with Janna. I'm Janna Jones, your leadership development specialist, coach, and mentor, here to help you build the most powerful skills in your toolkit. Today, we are focusing on a skill that is at the core of effective communication, relationship building, and therefore leadership: active listening. In a world filled with distractions and constant noise, truly listening to others has become a rare and valuable skill. Yet it is one of the most powerful ways to build trust, resolve conflicts, and create meaningful connections, both in your personal life and at work. In this episode, we will explore what active listening really means, why it's so crucial, and how you can develop and refine this skill to improve your relationships and your leadership. Whether you're leading a team, working on a project, or simply looking to connect more deeply with others, mastering active listening can transform your interactions. About ready to dive in, but first, I would really like to share a story that I think is much more poignant a way to understand why this is so incredibly important. When I facilitate sessions on this, I include an activity that is one of my favorites. I will ask half of the room to wait outside while I tell the other half of the room that I'm going to give them 2 minutes to talk about something that they are incredibly passionate about. Then I leave them to have a think on their topic before I head outside and give the other half of the room their instruction. I then tell the rest of the group the instruction I have given the others, and while they are talking, they have to not listen. This half of the group needs to actively pay along by doing all of the things that tell us that someone isn't listening, such as checking their watch, checking their phone, looking around the room, out the window, yawning, picking at something in their clothing, doodling on their notebook, playing with a corner of their notebook. And I know that they know what this looks like, because haven't we all been in a meeting with someone who is not listening? Sometimes it's far worse and it's our boss. Challenge accepted. I invite them back into the room. They sit down with a partner and play acting begins. Because I work with great leaders, they of course would not behave like this on a usual day, at least not consciously. The room starts to get quiet, and it's usually less than a minute in. And I'm even talking about rooms with over 100 people in them. Yes, I have done this with massive cohorts, and it's usually ridiculously hard to get the chatter to dull in a cohort of that size, but this activity never fails. I tell them time wasn't up. Someone lets me know that it was hard, and so I ask the speakers, the ones with the task of talking about something that they're incredibly passionate about, if that was hard for them. Consensus. Of course it was. I ask how they feel. Like crap is usually the more PG answer that I get. So why on earth would you feel like crap talking about something that you're so passionate about? Because they didn't listen. So if that's true, I have yet to come across someone who it isn't, by the way, then I want you to remember what I'm about to say next. The power of the conversation sits with the listener, not the speaker. We often think of power as commanding a room, speaking powerfully to a vision, saying something memorable or worth listening to, but more often than not, it is quite the opposite. Often, my non-listening side of the partnership will protest because they don't really want to do what I'm asking them to do to another person. They all know what it feels like, and so I make good on my promise and I ask them to try it again, but this time practicing the active listening skills that I have since walked them through. This time, when I try to ask the person speaking on the topic that they're passionate about how it felt, it takes quite some time to get them to stop talking, especially with a giant cohort. When I finally do manage, way more than 2 minutes later, by the way, and their unanimous answer is that it was quite uplifting, connecting, and empowering. The power of the conversation sits with the listener, not the speaker. So, what is active listening and what isn't it? It's so much more than just hearing the words that someone else is saying. It's about fully engaging with the speaker, understanding their message, and responding thoughtfully. It involves paying attention not to just the words, but also the tone, the body language, the emotions behind those words. Let's consider a few key components of active listening. Firstly, focused attention. This means giving the speaker your full, undivided attention, Put away distractions like your phone or other devices and focus on the person speaking. It's about being truly present in the moment with them. Understanding. One of my favorite Stephen Covey quotes is that most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. Active listening requires you to let go of your own agenda and not only hear the words, but also grasp the underlying message. This involves listening for meaning, context, and emotions. Responding thoughtfully, because after understanding the speaker's message, active listeners respond in a way that shows that they have truly listened. This could be through verbal responses like asking clarifying or deepening questions, or non-verbal cues like nodding or maintaining eye contact. Reflecting may be supported by paraphrasing or summarizing what the speaker has said to confirm your understanding. This shows that you're engaged and allows for necessary clarification, or if the speaker would like to share some additional information that they deem necessary. And of course, empathy. Active listening involves empathy and understanding and sharing the feelings of the speaker. This helps us to build trust and rapport and psychological safety, making the conversation far more meaningful. It isn't just about what you do when someone else is talking. It's really about creating a space where the speaker feels heard, understood, and valued. And don't we all want that for ourselves and those around us? Now that we know what active listening is, let's dig a little deeper into why it's so important, especially in leadership and for personal relationships. Firstly, it builds trust and rapport. When you listen actively, you are showing another person that you value their thoughts and their opinions. This builds trust, which is the foundation of any strong relationship, whether it's with a colleague, a friend, or a family member. It enhances our communication. Active listening improves the quality of your communications. When both parties are truly listening, misunderstandings are reduced and conversations become more productive. Resolving conflicts, because so many conflicts and upset arise from poor or unfulfilled communication. So by practicing active listening, you're better equipped to understand the root of the problem and to find a resolution that works for everyone. It fosters collaboration, such as in team settings, because active listening encourages that collaboration. When team members feel heard and respected, they are far more likely to contribute their ideas and to work together more effectively. It improves leadership because leaders who practice active listening are often more effective at understanding the needs, concerns, and motivation of their people. This allows them to make better decisions and to create a more positive and cohesive work environment. And it enhances empathy, of course, because listening actively naturally enhances your empathy by helping you to see things from the speaker's perspective. This deepens your connection and makes you more attuned to the emotions of those around you. Now, while active listening is powerful, it isn't always easy. So before we start to work on mastering that skill, let's consider some of the common barriers and how we might like to overcome them. Internal distractions are the bane of the existence of active listening. Sometimes the biggest distractions come from within, our own thoughts, our worries, our biases. Perhaps practicing mindfulness to stay in the moment and focused on the speaker may be of value for you. Gently setting aside your own internal chatter during conversations with others. Emotional reactions can be such a challenge. If a conversation in particular triggers a strong emotional response from you, it can be increasingly difficult to listen actively. For example, it may be easy to react emotionally where blame is being laid, or even accusations in a tough conversation. In that moment, you may like to take a deep breath, acknowledge your emotions, and try to stay focused on the speaker's message rather than your initial reaction. Preconceived ideas. Entering a conversation, and we all do this because we have our own ideas about things. We have our own past and history and our own considerations. But entering a conversation with preconceived notions or judgments can really hinder your ability to listen openly. When we do this, we often project ourselves, our own ideas onto the situation rather than listening to understand. It is always more valuable to try and approach each conversation with curiosity and a willingness to understand the other person's perspective. Lack of time. My goodness, I hear this the most. In our busy, fast paced lives and workplaces, it can be tempting to rush through conversations, but active listening really requires time and patience. Wherever possible, make sure that you're carving out sufficient time for important conversations and avoid multitasking. Cultural differences can also be challenging, as different cultures have varying communication styles which affect how messages are delivered and received, especially those living and working in multicultural environments or multinational organizations. Being aware of those differences and adapting your listening approach accordingly can help you navigate cross cultural conversations far more effectively. So, now that we've considered the barriers that we might need to address or overcome, let's look at how we can cultivate or strengthen our active listening skills, starting with some practical strategies to help you become a more active listener. Always eliminate distractions. Start off by creating an environment where you can focus on the speaker, and this means putting away your phone, turning off notifications, or choosing a quiet place away from the hustle and bustle of daily office or home environment for the conversation so that you won't be interrupted wherever possible. Practice mindful listening because mindfulness is about being fully present in the moment. When you're listening to someone, consciously focus on their words, their tone, and their body language. If your mind starts to wander, acknowledge it internally to yourself, please, not to the other person. You don't want to be in a difficult conversation and saying, hang on a second, my mind just started to wander. Let me come back to that. Acknowledge it internally and then gently bring yourself back to the conversation. Perhaps even asking a clarifying question should you need to. Use nonverbal skills. Nonverbal communication is a really great way to show that you're engaged by maintaining eye contact, not in a creepy way, nodding occasionally, and using facial expressions such as smiling or perhaps wincing at the right point in a way that reflects your understanding and that you're on the journey alongside them. Great listeners will also ask really effective questions. Sounds a little bit silly, right? Because we're talking about listening, but you're actually contributing to that conversation. It's active listening. Because open ended questions encourage the speaker to share more information and to go a little bit deeper into the topic than they perhaps would have otherwise. This is why, in the second round of my activity, in the noise in the room, it increases and it's really tough to pull everyone back and to continue facilitating because I'm asking both parties to really start to contribute to that conversation. For example, instead of asking, did you like the meeting, which is a really closed question, only requiring a yes or no answer, you might follow up by asking something like, what were your thoughts on the meeting? This is an open-ended question and invites a much more detailed response. Reflect and paraphrase what the speaker has said to you to show that you are actively processing their message. So, for example, you might say something like, so what I'm hearing is that you are really most concerned about the project deadline and how to navigate these conflicts as swiftly as possible. This not only confirms your understanding, but it then gives the speaker a chance to clarify if they feel that that's what's needed. Avoid interrupting. Especially as a leader, it can be so tempting to jump in with your thoughts or solutions, but interrupting often comes from a place of assumption rather than understanding, and it can effectively shut down the conversation. Perhaps practicing patience by letting the speaker finish their point of view before you respond. Show empathy. You can demonstrate empathy by acknowledging the speaker's feelings. You might say something such as, I can see how that's been really frustrating for you. Or it certainly sounds like you've been under a lot of stress. That shows that you are connecting with them on an emotional level, not just an intellectual one. Offer constructive feedback. Where appropriate, you actually might like to offer feedback that is both positive and constructive. Focus on the content of what's being said, not the speaker's character or personality. Remove blame, assumptions, or judgment. Try to stick to the facts and generously share an example if this might help. Always aim to maintain a positive and productive dialogue. And summarize the key points. This is great for most conversations. At the end of the conversation, to reinforce your understanding and ensure that both parties are on the same page, this also helps to clarify any actions or decisions that need to be made or actions that need to be taken by either party. That could be the the speaker or the listener in this case. It helps to clarify those and ultimately support greater progress, collaboration, and working together. And practice daily. Like any skill, active listening improves with practice, making it a conscious habit, applying these strategies to your daily interactions, whether that's at work, with friends, or at home. That will help you grow leaps and bounds in no time. Mastering active listening is a journey, but it's one that can transform your relationships, enhance your leadership, and create deeper connections in all areas of your life. We have covered so many opportunities together. So in summary, perhaps you might like to start by eliminating distractions. Stay in the moment, be mindful, use nonverbal cues, ask effective questions, reflect and paraphrase, avoid interrupting, show empathy, offer constructive feedback, summarize the key points, and practice, practice, practice. Consider how you might like to take this back into your own workplace and your leadership practice. It has been my absolute pleasure to connect with you today on Power Skills with Janna. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for more insights on building the skills that truly matter. Active listening is a skill that we can all develop over time, and the rewards are well worth the effort, both for ourselves and for the connections and relationships that we create with others. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so please don't hesitate to reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn via Power Skills Development, or visit www.powerskillsdevelopment.com if you'd like to work with us further. Please take a moment to leave a review, as it helps other great leaders to find and benefit from this powerful work. Thanks again for tuning in. Wherever you are, stay present, stay engaged, and have a fabulous rest of your week.